Hello, everybody. I am Mrs. Poppet, and this is my place. Welcome back for another story time today. I have a story that people often get confused with another story. This story is called Thumbkin. Sometimes people think it's the same as Thumbelina, but it's not. Thumbelina's about a little girl, and Thumbkin's about a little boy. So why don't we read Thumbkin now? Thumbkin. Once a woodsman and his wife had 7 boys. There were 10-year-old twins, 9-year-old twins, 8-year-old twins, and one single 7-year-old. The 7-year-old was very small and very quiet. At birth he'd been no bigger than your thumb, and so he was named Thumbkin. Thumbkin was the cleverest of all the boys. His family thought he was stupid, for he did not talk much, but he surely did know how to listen. The woodsman was very poor, and the family often went hungry. One year they were hungry all the time, for there was a famine. When the boys were abed, the worried woodsman spoke to his wife. "What shall we do?" he asked. "We love our boys. We cannot let them die of hunger. Tomorrow we must lead them far into the forest and lose them." "We can't. It's too cruel," cried his wife. She knew they had no food, but she dearly loved her boys. "In the forest a miracle might save them," said the woodsman. "At home they'll surely starve." His wife wept, but she had to agree. Thumbkin had heard every word, for he was a most noticing child. He quickly made a plan. He slipped outside and packed his pockets full of shiny pebbles. Then he went to bed. The next morning the woodsman took the boys deep into the woods. While he chopped wood, the boys gathered twigs. Little by little the woodsman moved away. Soon he couldn't see the boys, and he returned home alone. When the boys saw their father had gone, they were afraid. But Thumbkin had taken care to drop pebbles all along the way into the woods. They would lead them back out of the woods. So he said to his brothers, "Don't cry. Follow me, and we'll be home in no time." With Thumbkin leading them, the 7 boys trooped home. They stood outside the door, afraid to go in. What they didn't know was that the woodsman had a surprise while they were away. A man who owed him money for a long time had paid it back, and his wife had been able to buy lots of food. As the hungry pair sat down to eat, the wife began to weep. "I wish our boys were here. I'd give them a good supper." The boys heard her. "Here we are, mother," they shouted as they all piled into the house and sat down to a good supper. Until the food was gone, the family was merry together. But when the cupboard was bare, the woodcutter decided he would have to lose his boys again. He told his wife that he would take the boys deep into the forest the next day. Once again Thumbkin heard him. He tried to slip out and get pebbles, but the doors were locked. The next day as they left the house, their mother gave them some bread for lunch. Thumbkin left a trail of breadcrumbs to lead them home. They went into the deepest part of the woods. While they were busy working, their father left them alone again. Thumbkin wasn't worried, for he expected the breadcrumbs would lead them home. But when he looked, he found not a crumb. The birds had eaten them all. The lost boys walked and walked. Night fell and the wind howled. The boys shook in their shoes. It began to rain, a cold, cold rain. Thumbkin climbed a tree to see what he could see, and far to the left he saw a light. He got down and led his brothers to the left. Near the edge of the forest they found a lighted house. A woman answered Thumbkin's knock, and Thumbkin said, "Ma'am, we boys are lost. Can you keep us with you for tonight?" "You poor creatures!" cried the woman. Don't you know this is the home of an ogre who eats boys? The boys bunched together at the door. What can we do? Said Thumbkin. If you don't let us in, wolves will surely eat us. Maybe your husband will be kinder than the wolves. Very well, said the ogre's wife. Come and get warm at the fire. As they were drying out their wet clothes, there was a great banging at the door. It was the ogre. His wife quickly pushed the boys under the bed and let the ogre in. He sat right down at the table and started to eat. Then he began to sniff. I smell live meat, he said. I've been skinning a goat, said his wife. I smell live meat, roared the ogre. You can't fool me. He went straight to the bed and looked underneath it. He dragged out the boys one by one. Good, he shouted. 7 nice, tender boys. They'll make a nice dessert for my dinner party this week. The boys got on their knees and begged for mercy, but the ogre merely licked his lips. He sharpened his long knife and he picked up a boy. He was just about to spear him when his wife said, Oh, there's no need to do it tonight. There'll be plenty of time tomorrow. Quiet! Roared the ogre. Quickly his wife said, But they'll spoil before you can eat them. The pantry's full of meat already. You're right, said the ogre, dropping the boy. Feed them well and put them to bed. We'll fatten them up for a day or so. The good wife was glad of the chance to feed the boys. Afterward, she took them up to the room where her own daughters slept. There were 7 of these young ogresses. They all slept in one big bed, each with a gold crown on her head. They all had tiny eyes, sharp noses, and enormous mouths full of long, pointy teeth. There was another big bed in their room. The ogre's wife put the boys in the second bed. Thumbkin noticed the 7 crowns on the head of the 7 ogresses. Suppose the ogre changes his mind and decides to kill us tonight. Thumbkin took the boys' caps and crept across the room. He exchanged the caps for the ogresses' crowns. He put the crowns on his brothers' heads, and then he waited. He had been wise. The ogre awoke late that night, sorry he hadn't yet made meat out of the boys. Knife in hand, he hurried to the children's bedroom. He reached out into the darkness and felt a crowned head. He went to the other side of the room, shaking his head and saying, I almost got mixed up and killed my own nice ogresses. He came to the other bed and felt a head wearing a cap. There they are, he said. Quickly and neatly he cut the throats of the 7 ogresses. Then, smiling with satisfaction, he went back to bed and slept. When Thumbkin heard the ogre snore, he woke his brothers. Quickly they dressed, and then they tiptoed out and ran. The next morning, the ogre wanted to put the fresh meat in the pantry. He went to the children's room, and there were the ogresses, dead as could be. It's a trick, he howled. They'll pay for this. He jammed on his 7-league boots and ran out. He covered the countryside in a few strides, and soon came to the road the boys had taken. They were close to their father's home when they saw the ogre coming. He was stepping from hill to hill and striding across broad rivers as if they were the smallest of puddles. Thumbkin spied a hollow rock and quickly got his brothers in under it and followed them. Along came the ogre, out of breath. 7-league boots go fast, but they tire the man who wears them, just as if he'd run the whole distance without their help. The ogre stopped to rest. As luck would have it, he laid down right next to the rock where Thumbkin and his brothers were hidden. He fell fast asleep. Thumbkin said, Don't worry. Run home while he's asleep. I'll see you later. The boys ran off and arrived home in no time. Meanwhile, Thumbkin softly tugged off the ogre's 7-league boots and put them on himself. They were far too big, of course. But 7-league boots shrink or grow to fit their wearer perfectly. In a minute they fit Thumbkin. He strode to the ogre's house and said to the ogre's wife, "Thieves have captured your husband, and they will kill him if he doesn't give them all his money. He asked me to fetch all his wealth, every bit. He doesn't want to die." The ogress's wife gave Thumbkin bundles, bills, and sacks of gold. Thumbkin hurried home to his family with all that wealth on his back. Without his 7-league boots, the ogre could not find the brothers, so he quietly went home, and it took him a very long time. As you may imagine, the family was filled with pride for their youngest son. "Thumbkin is small," said his mother, "but he is not stupid." Isn't that such a sweet story? Sometimes all you need to do is listen, and you become quite smart and quite clever. Because when you hear what other people are saying, you understand things a whole lot more. So it's very important to remember to listen to people so that you can understand them and become smarter yourself. Wasn't that a delightful tale? I hope you liked it as much as I did, and I will have another one for you tomorrow. See you then.